The clock has struck noon, and so we are thrilled to welcome you to Crafting Your Next Chapter, our virtual information session. We are joined by the two fabulous instructors, Stephanie and Russ, and I'll come to them in a moment. But I'll start by introducing myself. I'm Seth Green. I'm the dean here at the University of Chicago Graham School. And for more than 130 years, we have had Hyde Park as our gorgeous home here in Chicago. And we have been the home of lifelong learning. And so I'll talk a little bit about our school, why we got started in crafting our next chapter, and then I'm going to turn it over for the bulk of this session to Stephanie and Russ to walk us through a snapshot of the program. And then we will briefly discuss the application process and answer your questions. So let me just start by saying that the Graham School is the home of lifelong learning and leadership here at the university. And we have been at this mission for more than 130 years because we are one of the founding divisions of this university. Because when it was being established by William Rainey Harper in 1890, the ambition for him and the founding philanthropist John D. Rockefeller was to ensure that learning happened across all ages and stages of life, and that the experience of the liberal arts was something that was truly lifelong in nature. And so we have a very proud mission that starts with longevity as its origin, and that we continue to embrace today with programs like this one. Let me talk a little bit now about why we started Crafting Your Next Chapter with Russ and Stephanie. So the origin story here is that while we were originally founded in 1890, and it was already a focus of the university to look across all ages and stages of life, the ages and stages have grown a lot since that time frame. And indeed, if you look back to when the university was founded, and you look to today, life expectancy has nearly doubled. It's a remarkable transition. And what it means is that people essentially have, if you think about the nature of life, a second adulthood. And that also means that there may be intellectual needs for individuals who are discerning how to utilize that chapter of their life. And that just like the liberal arts can be a really powerful tool for undergraduates and graduate students, it can equally be so for people in midlife who are thinking about how to make this transition purposefully and joyfully. And so we began this journey in many ways as a school about 3 years ago when we brought together over 250 eminent scholars, distinguished practitioners, and accomplished leaders to think about the possibilities for life transition programs. And a number of ideas came out of that, but one of them was, how do we use the latest research in behavioral psychology, in wellness, and in thinking to really support people of all backgrounds who want to craft a meaningful and purposeful next chapter, whether that's in the current seat that they're in because they want to bloom where they're planted and just take new purpose to what they're already doing, or to make a transition into a new field or domain area. And so that led us to this vision for crafting, which is really designed for people that are in mid to late career, that want to engage in the university's very distinctive approach to education, which is to be in deep, rigorous, and respectful open exchange with people that also bring unique viewpoints, and then an eagerness to really develop a vision for a meaningful next chapter. And so with that, I want to turn it over to Russ and Stephanie. But as I do so, I will just say that they have been teaching in this program with extraordinary expertise now for 2 years and over 3 cohorts. And while we are still early in this program, it is fair to say that it is already a beloved endeavor of our unit. I'll just show here a few of the statements that came out of just the surveys that we provided that were not meant as endorsements, but turned out to be. I love the readings and the discussion from my classmates, guided so well by Russ and Stephanie. I really learned to be patient and incremental, celebrate the successes, however small. I am also left with the realization that this is a rest of my life pursuit, and that doing this with my significant other and family involved in my own personal growth is exciting and will be most meaningful. The best insight for me, this is another participant, was how many other like-minded people from all walks of life were at a similar stage in their life vis-a-vis thinking about next steps post their executive working careers. The course was invaluable to me in identifying where I'm heading and what's most important to me as I approach my late 50s and decide where to spend my time. Thank you for the gift of this course, Russ and Stephanie. I can't thank you enough for this experience. You are two amazing team members. I can't imagine this course taught by another other duo. It was so intense that I'm in a bit of a funk for not having it on my calendar anymore. And so with that, I will take down my screen. I will turn it over to Russ and Stephanie, and I'll allow them to share more about the program. Russ and Stephanie?
Well, yeah, thank you, Seth. This is really a pleasure being here. It's just been such a wonderful journey to be on with you in the Graham School the last couple of years, in terms of realizing the possibilities for all of us in this, as you said, the second adulthood, the second parts of our lives. So now the most challenging piece for me, which is to figuring out how to use the share on Zoom and get it all up and running. So just give me a second here. And success, yes?
Success, we see it.
Good. There you go, wonderful. So what Steph and I, as Seth highlighted, we've been teaching this program at the Graham School for the last couple of years. We've had 3 groups involved and engaged in the program, which has been wonderful. One of the great bonuses is that, as one of the quotes that Seth shared, people don't want to leave, because part of what's powerful about the program is the community that gets created. And so there's an active alumni community that's developed, and so it truly has been a wonderful experience, both not just teaching the course, but feeling like we're building a set of engaged, energized folks who are crafting remarkable lives and supporting each other in the process. So Steph and I want to just take a few minutes to share a little bit about that background in the course and really invite you to join us. So just quickly, we're thinking about 2 pieces to what we want to share with you. First is just spend a little bit of time kind of reframing how we think about the promise and potentials we have in the second half of our lives in a way that, frankly, is a bit countercultural, because we'll talk a lot about the assumptions people have about aging and about what it means to be going through our life, and then really dive in and talk more about the specifics of the course and how we kind of deliver, if you will, on that promise and potential. So I want to start kind of at a personal level, because one of the things that's special, I think, about this program is it's not just teaching something about other people. We're all going through life together. And Steph and I are, also in some sense in the next chapter. And the beginnings of I want to talk about the beginnings of this program. Really started about 5 years ago. I was the CEO of a nonprofit organization, which actually where I originally met Seth, called the Center for Higher Ambition Leadership, and it brought together purpose and values-driven leaders in the for-profit and nonprofit sectors. I had done that for about a decade. It was a terrific experience for me. And then I hit 65, and I decided, this has been terrific, but I built the organization. It really feels like it's time to pass the baton to someone else from the next generation, and then think about my own next chapter and where to go from here. And at that point, I started to get some really interesting reactions from people, which I will share with you. So it must feel great to be retiring and having all that free time to sleep late and have fun. How's your health holding out? Have you taken up golf yet, right? And so there were all these assumptions people were making, essentially, about somehow that because I had decided to stop being sort of engaged in full-time employment, that somehow the only option for me was sort of a very traditional model of retirement, which frankly for me felt like being put up on a shelf somewhere, to slowly fade away into the dust. And I said to myself, geez, that's not how I see my life at this point. Actually, things are just getting going in interesting ways. I've got all kinds of degrees of freedom. And Stephanie was going through a very similar experience at the Mass General as a senior physician, as well, in terms of thinking about where she was going in her life. So really, the origins of this course, and these have been, I think, very much validated subsequently by the various people in the course, are really around asking a very different set of questions. Can we inspire to something other than just getting older? At this stage of the game, how do we fully leverage our capabilities and talents? And probably most significantly, how do we find meaning and purpose in this next chapter of our work and lives? And that's really the heart of what this is about, is in some sense creating the opportunity for each of us to be proactively shaping our lives in ways that are more meaningful and significant. It's part of why it's so exciting to be doing this work. And I want to acknowledge up front that it's not easy, right, to shift into this mindset. And frankly, it wasn't easy for me to make that shift, because I realized that even for myself, I had some very deep-seated assumptions about what it meant to get older, shaped, like all of us, by our family, by my parents, and in the case by my grandparents as well. And I want to share this picture, which is a special picture to me, but it also resonates around the topic we're talking about, of two of my grandparents, Sam and Bessie, after their retirement. And, they were up in the Catskills, which, was referred to as the Bush Belt outside of New York. They were in their late 60s at that time, and they truly were retired in the traditional sense of the word, right? They were tired, and they needed to retire. My grandfather worked in a factory. He worked delivering papers. He had a really hard life. He worked 50, 60 hours a week. And when he hit 65, man, the idea of just sitting and relaxing was a terrific thing to be doing. But that was my view of what retirement was about, and clearly that didn't fit for me. Fortunately, that's not the only image out there, and I want to turn this over to Stephanie to talk about a different model of how you can think about those stages in life. Steph, over to you.
Well, thanks, Russ, and hello, everyone. So, for me, my grandmother had quite an influence on me in my life, and she had to rethink her life when her husband died when she was age 60. As an artist and a photographer, she figured out a way to sort of connect her different loves, the love of travel and the love of art. And here she is on an archaeologic dig in Tanzania, Africa, and she decided to live with the Maasai tribe for 3 months. And she used the experience to create her art and her serigraphs. And then she loved that experience so much that she continued doing this for the rest of her life in other countries around the world, including China, when travel there started to open up, Australia and Indonesia. And it was quite an inspiration for me growing up. My father had a much more traditional road to retirement, and as an organic chemist in R&D in a small division of a large corporation, he had mandatory retirement at age 65. He had no choice and struggled with this for many years when work came to an end. So the average age for retirement in the US for all workers has been rising. It used to be around age 57. Now it's up to age 62. And for most jobs, there is no mandatory retirement age. For physicians, they traditionally retire actually later, on average around age 68. Overall, we're living longer and healthier lives. And so the idea of rewirement and thinking creatively as to what we can do with our next chapter, what that might look like, what the opportunity is that lies ahead, becomes possible. Russ, the next slide. So just take a few seconds and think about what you see in this slide. Is this person young? Is this person old? Russ, the next slide. It turns out that our mental models that come from our upbringing and our culture very much shape how we view the world and our perception of our reality. In a study of 14,000 adults over the age of 50 by Nakamura and her team at the Harvard Chance School of Public Health, found that perception matters. People with a more positive attitude towards aging and higher satisfaction with aging had a 43% lower risk of dying from any cause over a 4-year period. So our mindset about aging not only shapes how we see and react to the world, but it also impacts our health. Russ, the next slide. So ask yourself now, how are you imagining your future years unfolding? Is it opportunity for renewal and reinvention? Or is there a sort of sense of dread? It's a slow and steady decline into old age. What are the images and role models that you have for this stage? Think about your parents, your professional colleagues, friends. What's portrayed in the popular press or TV and movies? What resonates with you? And what do you hope to embrace? What do you hope to avoid? Russ, back to you.
So before I move on, I just want to say the course is extremely interactive, and in this session, Stephanie and I want to share a bit, but we're going to have a Q&A at the end of the session, and so as folks, as we listen, if you have kind of questions or thoughts, please feel free to put them in the chat, and then we can come back to them in the Q&A session at the end. So just building on what Stephanie is saying, again, back to this issue around mindset, part of the reason why kind of shifting your mindset about the second part of your life is so hard is because we've really all grown up with a very simple model about life, right? Certainly most of us have, which is sort of what I think about as sort of this three-stage life model, right? Which is that you have this period of rapid growth and development in childhood and adolescence, right? Where you're, quote, in school and you're learning, and that's the time when you're supposed to be putting all the pieces together. You graduate from the college or whatever your final degree is, you hit adulthood, and it's this long plateau that you go through. And the idea is that somehow, you're fixed, and then you hit retirement, and then it's the decline on the other side. And it's a pretty draconian view of what a life is, but it's certainly what a lot of us have grown up with and thought about in our lives. But as Seth talked about before, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense when lifespans are doubling, when now the average age is double what it was, 40 to 80, and as Seth highlighted, people are talking about the 100-year life coming up in the future for us. And so the opportunity to have longer and healthier lives, that period of time after 50 is extraordinary. I mean, it's interesting that the Social Security age, at 65 was, as I understand it, really set because that was the average age of mortality. And so, it led to healthy economics, but certainly a different model than kind of where we are currently. So the point is, as you think about this and you think about that expanding lifespan, what does that actually mean for the nature of the lives that we lead? Well, as opposed to the three stages that we talked about before, in fact, and think about three additional stages that start to emerge as people have that longer period of their lives. The first of those, interestingly, is very relevant, certainly for my kids and maybe for your children as well, which is that, the growing up exploration stage doesn't stop in college. There's a lot of data that shows that people are getting married later, they're having children later, There's much more exploration around work opportunities. As our youngest child says, I'm on a voyage of discovery. And, it's funny, I remember my parents saying to us, when are you going to settle down? Because we were settling down in the mid-20s. And now as my kids are in their early 30s, I'm asking the same question to them. And it's a scary thing when you become your parents, by the way. That's a whole other conversation. Anyway, and so that's one stage. And then, there really is a shift in terms of people's life courses. There are two others, though, which are really the focus of what this program is, which we call the Reimagine stage, which is 50 to 65, which is really starting at mid-career, where people start to say, is that all there is? Do I want to stay with what I've been doing, or is there an opportunity to revitalize and rebalance my work? And then what we call kind of the rewiring stage, which is, 60 to 75. These are plus or minus because there's some individual variation, but really where you start to transition from full-time work, right? Where you really, it's more a question, you have more control over how you put your life together. In agency and putting the pieces together. And then there truly is a point where, old age, if you will, traditional retirement, where, like my grandfather, Sam, you say enough, okay, I really just want to take it easy. But that's less really what this is about. The focus and the opportunity is for those of us who are in those stages 4 and 5 and making it come out right. And by the way, part of what's exciting about the program is in fact the diversity within those stages and the ways in which the folks in stage 5 can have wisdom for the folks in stage 4, and the folks on stage 4 have imagination around where they are and that informs others as well. So let me talk a little bit about both of those stages. So stage 4, which again, that 50 to 75, 50 to 65 period, it's really around, the question, how do you craft a successful second act, right? That, it used to be called kind of the midlife crisis, age 40, and interestingly, as people are living longer, it tends to be moving up more towards the late 40s or early 50s. And the point here is, often people are feeling, geez, I've been successful, or I've done one thing in my career up to now. I've really been sprinting in order to establish myself in what I'm doing. But I'm wondering, is that all there is? I don't want to be in the place where I feel like I'm retiring in place, or I'm burnt out, or I've just lost my creativity. And so that question about, okay, having experienced adulthood, having, established oneself professionally, what does that act look like? And so often, that can be around new sources of meaning and purpose for some people. For others, and this is one of the themes that came out often in the program, is around creating more room for other dimensions of life, right? So that it's not that work doesn't really matter and have a central role, but how do I also take care of my health? How do I invest in my relationships and add joy to my life? For folks, interestingly, for folks who've been more focused on child rearing earlier in the life course, it may be about how do I re-enter the workforce? How do I think about going back to some of those pieces in my life? But the sense of rebalance at that stage.
Getting
Again, that,
Russ,
I'm
you
sorry,
froze.
and then that second,
Okay, you're back.
then that second, yeah, thank you. That second stage, stage 5, is what we truly the rewirement, and where people are moving from kind of a clearly defined full-time role, typically in the workplace, to much more of what we call a portfolio model of professional and personal activities. So I've been thinking about how to put the pieces together. I may do some volunteer work. I may actually continue to be working in a professional capacity, but I want to be creating some more space in terms of spending time with my family or traveling or whatever those things are. And there's this remarkable opportunity to really put together a portfolio that makes sense and that's personalized for you. But it's not easy. And a lot of what the course is about is helping people to make that transition. Part of it is about, the saying goodbye, letting go of the life that you've led up to that point. What's the timing for making that change? What's the legacy? What feels like completion in terms of your life's work and the thing that you've dedicated yourself to? How do you pass the baton? How do you think about the next generation of people who can take forward your work? And to be honest about it, there's some grieving that people go through, some really coming to terms with what does it mean to be leaving something that's been so significant in my life. And so that's it's like Janice, that's the looking back piece. But there's also the looking forward piece around how do I craft a new life and shape an open-ended future. And part of what's challenging about that is just how open-ended it is for me. What is my identity now that I no longer have that card that I can tell to people, this is who I am? What's the elevator pitch when I go to a party and I meet people to describe who I am and what I'm doing? Relationships, is one of the themes that comes up for a lot of folks, which is so much of people's relationships tend to be connected to work. And now that I have this time, how do I engage in different ways? How do I deepen my friendships, my relationship with my family, to work out potential issues that I might have in those relationships? And then just life structure, it's one thing, I know from Monday to Friday, I have to get up. I've got to be someplace in the morning. As Stephanie and I have talked about, what happens when every day is Saturday, right? Where you basically have that freedom. How do you build that structure yourself? So for people making that transition, it's both an opportunity, but there are also some real challenges that, we help each other and the folks in the course help each other to work through. And so overall, if you look at this period, what's really striking about it is that it's a period of increasing freedom, in the sense that, for many folks, your children are more and more independent or out of the house. You have more potential, more freedom relative to choices you're making around your career. But the other thing that people talk about in the program is the fragility piece, which is a realization that life is not endless. That there are people in your life who, sadly, as we get older, are experiencing illness and in some cases have passed away. And so we become much more acutely aware that this is a precious gift that we've been given, the time that we have to truly craft our life, to have a sense of agency about our lives. So much, one of the things that people talk about in the course is that early in your life, our lives tend to be reactive, right? There's so much incoming stuff that we're just simply responding to, which is terrific, right? We're in the thick of things. But now we have an opportunity to take a step back, and as opposed to just being on autopilot, to truly say, what is the life that we want to be leading, and how do we put those pieces together? And the good news, what do I really want to do with my life, with the rest of my life? And the good news is that it turns out that we actually have some real resources to bring to bear, if you will, wisdom, in terms of the research that says, look, we may not be as great at solving math problems or playing chess or playing professional baseball or basketball, but our emotional intelligence, our pattern recognition, our ability to really be thoughtful increases with time. And having the opportunity, which a course like this gives, to truly give yourself the space to access that wisdom and the wisdom of other people is really what the promise of the program is about. And let me turn this over now to Stephanie to talk in some more depth about the actual program itself and how it hopefully delivers on the promise that we've just been talking about.
Yeah, Russ, you want to move this slide ahead?
Yes, I do.
We're going to jump into the course overview. So, thanks, Russ, for that overview. The program started as a pilot at Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston, which is where I have spent my career and continue to be there. And the course was targeting senior physicians and researchers. And then since 2023, it's been taught at the University of Chicago Graham School for a much broader audience. And in our evaluation surveys from all the classes, 100% of the participants reported that they would recommend the course to someone else with an overall rating of 4.74 out of 5. The course is 8 virtual sessions, 120 minutes each session, every other week, with about 1 to 1.5 hours of preparation work for each session in between. We see this as a guided journey that's grounded in the latest research in lifespan development and positive psychology. And based on the learnings from these fields, it includes self-reflective exercises, provocative readings, an organized, extensive course guidebook with relevant resources. And even now we have an online library, large and small group discussion with a lot of peer-to-peer support, individual coaching by us, and then an opportunity after the course is done to join an active post-course alumni community. We've kept enrollment limited to about 28 students, and the course participants are really a diverse group. So first of all, they have a range of experiences and come from different industries. Geographically, they represent a wide map from the US to around the world. And of course, there's a strong representation from Chicago. They're at different stages in their transition process. Some are currently working and thinking about how to leverage their skills and talents going forward in their own work. Others are close to traditional retirement age and thinking about the next chapter. And others are actually already retired, have been reflecting, trying new things as they continue to create their next chapter and are reflecting on that. Many are thinking and sharing similar issues. They're asking themselves, how do I turn aspiration into action? How do I deal with all the uncertainty and avoid feeling that sense of dread? How do I leverage my current skills and strengths, what's working, but also develop new ones and find my next purpose? How do I manage evolving relationships, my social connections, including loss and regrets? How do I learn to let go and embrace my growing freedom, perhaps even be able to stretch the rubber band a bit as I move forward? And then how to find more balance in my life and focus on what's really important to me. An added advantage of taking this course is the connection to the University of Chicago Graham School and all the resources that the school has to offer, everything to help make the experience good for you. So the next crafting course starts September 16th and runs through December 9th, and we're always off for Thanksgiving. Russ, the next slide. So our over 70 past participants from the previous classes have been extremely enthusiastic about giving feedback, and we welcome that. And that's actually informed our own quality improvement process for the course. They've been particularly enthusiastic about having the opportunity to have a variety of personal interactions that sort of harness the power of the group and the community in a safe and trusted environment with well-facilitated group process. Many have actually reported feeling less ambivalence about their life choices and feeling more energized about the journey going forward after becoming part of the learning community. So one participant said it created a safe space for colleagues to share their vulnerabilities, challenges, and successes. Another one said, the course is invaluable to me in identifying where I'm heading and what's most important to me as I approach my late 50s and decide where and how I want to spend my time. Another person said, the course gave me permission to try something different. It helped me to focus on what I really should let go of and what I really want to do and wanted to do over the last years that I can now make a reality. And in another, the course gave me the time and permission to reflect in a semi-structured manner with insightful leadership in a way that allowed me to identify new and actionable steps. Russ, the next slide. So we want to highlight two parts of the course which are particularly unique and have been particularly impactful for the students. One are what we call progress partner groups. These are small peer support groups of 3 to 4 people that meet between classes, and they provide an additional small and safe space to process and deepen the learnings from the class. They help you to navigate your way towards your next chapter by first serving as a learned sounding board, because everyone brings a wealth of experience to the class. They serve as an accountability partner, helping you to stay on track, and it provides mutual support even after the course ends through our alumni community. And that gets us to, we also have developed an active CYNC alumni community. You'll be the 4th University of Chicago cohort, and after the class finishes, you have the option to join this ongoing network. And every September, we have an in-person alumni reunion in Chicago, which is actually organized by the alumni working with the Graham School. And the group has also developed regular online meetings on relevant topics, taking advantage of the expertise within the group. And we've launched an alumni website, currently using the Mighty Networks platform for ongoing connection, events, more classes, and learning. So with that, I'll switch back to Russ.
Wonderful. Good. So Seth talked a lot about the structure and the key components of the program. I want to take a few minutes to talk about the actual content, the curriculum. So there are three. The course is built around a very simple model that we call the three R's: reframe, revitalize, and reinvent. And the first piece of it, and the first piece of the course, is around reframing, and that's part of what we've done as well. What we've discovered is mindset really matters, actually, in terms of people's experience. And really how one approaches and how you think about this period. And that's not just an intellectual exercise. I think one of the things that we stress throughout the program is learning by doing, reaching out and learning, exploring, experimenting, talking to people, engaging. The reason that we have the course as a set of sessions that are separated by a couple of weeks between each of those is to give people an opportunity to go out and engage with the world, and then come back to the course, talk to your progress partners. And so that process of active engagement, which really does lead to testing your assumptions about where you are, about your career. We have people come in and say, oh my gosh, I'm stuck. I'm stuck in terms of, where I am in my work. I don't know how I move forward. Say, well, have you really tested that? Have you talked to folks about options? You don't have to make a big decision. You can begin to test the waters in different ways, and people start to feel unstuck. The second part of the course, the second stage, is what we call revitalization, which is re-energizing your current work in life. So, there's a tendency to say, okay, I've got to somehow solve the whole thing up front. I need this vision of my future life. We very much are committed to people starting where they are, really looking at your current work, taking stock of where you are, clearing the underbrush, because people find that they've just got a lot of clutter, a lot of things that are filling up their time, and really saying what really matters to me, beginning to renegotiate your roles and commitments based on what those priorities are, and to build new habits and mindsets. And all of that really builds the foundation for the final part of the course, which really what creates the opportunity to start to truly dream big, if you will, to think about what is that future vision for your life, to draft a plan, to think about what are the critical choices that you may need to be making going forward. And then most critically, staying the course, because this is not something back to the alumni network, one of the consistent themes that we have is this is a fantastic course, but it doesn't end, after eight sessions. And so how do I stay the course? How do I continue to craft and recraft and reframe my life going forward? So I want to drill down just in take a couple of minutes before we get to the Q&A to talk a little bit more about each of those sections and to give you just a flavor of some of the key ideas that we'll be covering if we work together in the program. So the first of those is we talk about reframing. What we find is that there's some fundamental shifts in frame that happen for people in the program, and I want to talk about those. First of those is, again, this shift from making the assumption that somehow it's all or none, right? That, I either need to keep doing what I'm doing or I need to totally shift the nature of my life. Often people find that there's an opportunity to what we call dial up or dial down, begin to explore areas that you might be interested in the future, volunteer in an area where you might be shifting to going forward, potentially scale back some of your current activities. Again, that it's not just about big decisions, but starting from where you are, looking at small steps, learn as you go, and really thinking about how do you start to revitalize your life before reinventing. And then the second shift is actually, there's a tendency for all of us to think that it's on our shoulders, right? We've got to do this on our own. And it's truly liberating to start to realize the power of community, right? That I'm not alone, that there are other people going through this as I am, that I can not just mobilize my community in the program, but I can really think about the broader community that I have in my life and how do I engage people as partners in this process, whether it's my significant other, close friends, and others. And that's another terrific shift that happens for people in the program. This is an interesting one, right? I think for a lot of us, we're trained throughout our lives to be problem solvers, and we get really good at that, right? In terms of focusing on what's not working and how do we fix things. If you think about, people saying, I want to give you feedback, typically it tends to be negative, right? And so there's this approach in some ways that we adapt, which tends to be pretty oriented towards the problem solving and the negative. Part of what we focus in the course is really building on strengths. There's a reason we've gotten to where we are in our lives, learning to savor the highs, the things that are working, and learning to learn from the lows, not to feel, of course, all of us have peaks and valleys in our lives, but seeing those changes, some of the challenges, opportunities. One of the things we actually talk about that really resonates for people is what does it mean to adopt a growth mindset, and how do you bring that to life in a positive way. And finally, and this gets back to what we were saying before, to say there's nothing inevitable about what happens with our lives, that actually we can proactively shape our futures, and that's an opportunity for each of us. So all of this stuff is easy to say. It's simple, to describe. It almost sounds like a set of cliches. But what we find is it's not easy, right? Because for all of us, we're deeply ingrained with some ways of being in the world. And so part of the program is about learning and learning again and bringing to action and building new muscle memory around some very different ways of engaging and relating. So that's really on, if you will, thinking about that first stage around reframing, and I want to talk to the second stage around revitalization. There's a core framework we use in the program, which we call the compass, and it's 4 dimensions that come out of research, but also very much validated by the experience of the people in the program, that have been found to actually each of those individually and collectively to be related to the things that lead to having a long and happy life, right? So quite literally related to people's longevity, and also to people's level of happiness. The first of those is around meaning and purpose, right? And really determining how do we feel a sense that we're making a positive difference in the world, which is enormously powerful and important for us. Second, to those around relationships. Robert Waldinger, who's a professor at Harvard Medical School, found in a really significant study, longitudinal study, that actually people with positive relationships literally live decades longer than those that don't. That the impact of positive relationships is as great as not smoking 2 packs a day, something, to that order of magnitude, as well as this enormous impact on people's sense of happiness. And then health, right? Both physical health, mental health, for a number of people, spiritual health, in terms of what that looks like, whether that's formal religion or just, again, a sense of meaning or larger connection in the world. And then the final one is around joy, just allowing yourself the space to actually get the most out of life, but to do that in balance. I mean, it's interesting. It's one of the things that people talk a lot about in the program is that people are so goal-oriented and so mission and purpose-oriented. People almost feel, how do I allow myself some time and space for that piece in my life as well? And so thinking about what that balance is powerful. And we create the space for people to do that in the program, to think about, what are the positives and negatives? What's really working in each of those quadrants, red, yellow, green, and where are the opportunities for improvement? And you may want to just think about that for yourself as you take a minute and you just think about those dimensions and where are those opportunities. And what we encourage people to do in the program is to say very pragmatically, okay, what can I do to enhance my life right now and to explore the possibilities for an even better next chapter, right? Because some of the things may be as simple as just sending a text to a friend around relationships, and that's something you can do easily. And some of the things require, obviously, they may make a decision about my career or shifting and so on, that may require much more engagement going forward. And, it's one of those things that some people in the course talk about, literally taking this framework and taking a look at it at the end of the day or the end of the week and saying, not just in the big term, but in the short term, where am I? Did I feel good about how I connected to people? Did I give myself some space for some joy in my life? And how do I feel like I made meaningful progress and so on? So it's a very helpful frame. And we, again, back to giving a sense of the program. In the course, we have a whole template, which is part of the guidebook that Stephanie talked about, around a set of things to think about in each of those areas, and then opportunity for people to rate themselves and to think about that, again, personally, about where they are and where they need to be. The other half of this we find is, as we said before, helping people in terms of the present, is to help people to clear the underbrush and get rid of some of the clutter. And so we have people just list their major activities and commitment and just simply think about, which of those are truly most energizing, which really are energy creators and which are energy sappers, which are most meaningful and which aren't. There may be, not everything is energizing that's meaningful. There may be some things that are important for us to be doing that really are meaningful, but we want to be thoughtful about how we put that portfolio. And then what are the implications of that? What do I want to do more of? What I do want to do less of? How do I approach things differently? And again, another framework for starting with where you are and beginning to craft in very pragmatic terms how you start to shape your life in the direction you need it to go. And then finally, identifying where more fundamental reinvention is needed. So that reinvent stage, what would you hope and expect your life and work would look like 3 to 5 years from now? What do you want to preserve and build on? Are there paths not taking or dreams deferred that you would want to more fully explore? For a lot of us, we've developed parts of ourselves but there are other dreams that we have that we may not have had time for. If you had no constraints, what would you be doing? And then again, pragmatically, what are some initial steps you can take to begin to bring that future to life? How can I do that? Just simply talk to other people who are doing some of the things that you might think about doing, or there's some low-cost ways to what we call try before you buy, in terms of doing some things that might be helpful. So that's a very quick overview of what, a lot of the territory we cover. Before we get to the Q&A, I just want to end with a very simple thought, which is one of Stephanie and my favorites, Mary Oliver, and it really felt that she sort of captured what this course is about. So crafting your next chapter, to answer the question, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? And if we have the true privilege of working with you on that, that would be a wonderful, wonderful thing. And if we don't, we still hope that you have a wonderful plan to figure out what to do with your one wild and precious life, because it's a gift. So over to you, Seth, and on to the Q&A.
Yes, well, thank you so much, Russ and Stephanie. And I'm going to race through the remainder so we get to a few minutes of questions. We have applications now open. We encourage you to apply because this has filled up every cohort quite early. The early admissions deadline is June 13, 2025, so you can be considered before it potentially fills. And we'll make sure in the follow-up to include a link to that, as well as I'll put it in the chat momentarily. If selected, as you saw, the class will meet from September 16th to December 9th. So right up until the holiday season, from 3 to 5 every other Tuesday. The program cost is $3,995. The thing I want to emphasize is that we do have scholarship support, and we want to make this as accessible as possible to people from all walks of life. So with that, let me take down my screen. And I'll add myself here, although the experts are on top of me, at least in my version of Zoom, Russ and Stephanie. And we are eager to engage with your questions. This is an intimate information session, and so please either unmute, and I'll allow that to happen now, or please put your questions in the chat. So you should now be able to unmute should you want to, and then I will pull up the chat. I saw that we already have one question in here from Anton. Does mindset affect health, or does health affect mindset? I'm guessing it will be both ways, but Stephanie, I'm looking at you as our health professional in the room for the answer to that question to get us started.
Right. Well, Anton, I love that question, of course, and it is, and the research has shown both ways, so that obviously a mindset allows for a commitment to healthier behaviors, and these healthy behaviors have been associated with better health outcomes. And then having your health and feeling well affects your mindset. You feel more open to new opportunities and to growth.
Great. Other questions that you may have, and I see one in the chat. When we apply by June 13th, how long until we learn? So you will learn if you're admitted after that application deadline within 2 weeks. So basically by the end of June. And then there is a deposit, and there's a manager for this program, Conway, who is actually managing another program that has a major event today. So they can confirm. I believe there is a modest deposit that is due within a 1 to 2 week time cycle, and then the remainder due closer to the autumn as the program actually starts. And we can certainly work with anyone who needs different types of support there, and again, have scholarships. We want to make sure that while there is a fee, that it is not an impediment to anyone participating. Other questions? All right, well, it was a bit, oh, can you provide details on the application? Yes, so the application, and let me actually put in here the link so you can see for yourself what this looks like, and see that it is not the same as applying to college at the University of Chicago in nature, though it is meaningful. The big questions on here are for you to put out what your vision is for the next chapter of life and work. And obviously, you don't have the perfect answer to that, or you probably wouldn't be coming to this program. But we do want to understand how you're seriously reflecting on it, what hypotheses you may have, and how you might anticipate utilizing this to get to that answer, and how would this program sharpen and activate your vision for your next chapter. And so this is not about your SAT scores or, about your quantitative mathematics abilities. This is really about your readiness to be a serious and active contributor to this program, because we find that peers are such a vital part of making this valuable for everyone else in the room. And your initial thoughts, and I mean, Stephanie and Russ, you can talk to this, but a big part of this too is that you're trying to compose a cohort that comes from different backgrounds and has different ideas for the future, so that people can constantly expand one another's horizons. So again, this is different than other admission cycles may be. It is less about showcasing, perfect acumen and intelligence, and more about showcasing certain values that will make you both a valuable contributor and hopeful beneficiary from this program. Yes, we will be sharing the full recording, and Stephanie and Russ, with your permission, we could share, again, up to you, we could potentially share the slides as well.
Mhm.
So Seth, I'm also looking at and I'm also aware of time, and so maybe I'll just quickly touch on some of the things in the in the chat.
Retirement.
Yeah. So Jean Marie, absolutely. I mean, the reality is that's something that's the world we'll live in, and that's one of the things that happens with folks, and how people adjust to that certainly, absolutely is totally relevant. Pam, you'd asked about in-person events. The program is virtual, but what's interesting is that particularly for our folks in Chicago, but elsewhere, participants wind up just getting together and having lunches and getting to know each other. As Stephanie talked about before, we also have the reunion every year in Chicago, because people, Zoom is great, but it's a wonderful thing to actually see people face to face and share a meal and do the rest of it. So, yeah, is that it? I think those were the questions. Yeah.
That is it.
Good.
It looks like in the questions, and it is 12:59, so we have made it in perfect timing. Thank you, Russ and Stephanie. We are immensely grateful for your teaching this course here and being part of our school community and enriching it in doing so. And thank you all for joining us. This is a very special jewel, and we are grateful for the people that are part of it, as well as the program leadership. So we're grateful that you're considering candidacy. Certainly look forward to answering any questions you may have from here, and you'll receive a follow-up email tomorrow with this video, other materials, and a contact if you want to ask any questions. Thank you all. Have a great afternoon. And thank you again, Russ and Stephanie.
Thank you.
Thank you.